Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder Second Edition and the Path Builder app. In this week's Full Build Friday, take up arms as a Grandmaster himself, Jax from League of Legends.
1,000 years of battle and I'm just warming up!
But before you step into the ring, let's stop by the armory and gear up with some build goals. From a mechanical standpoint, Jax is fairly basic. A lot of his powers are purely about enhancing his base stat line. He's classified as a skirmisher who can inflict considerable damage over time, thanks to situational defensive tools letting him hang in extended fights. Attacks from Jax generate stacks of relentless assault, gaining increased attack speed, though this passive also includes Grandmaster at angling, which allows him to fish for gold, and brief ability power. Leap Strike allows Jax to jump to a target, dealing damage if he lands on an enemy. Empower literally does what it says on the tin. It empowers his next attack. Counter Strike is probably one of his more complex abilities, causing him to briefly spin his staff around himself while deflecting all incoming attacks. When he reactivates it, or at the end of its duration, he stuns all enemies around him. His final ability is the eponymous Grandmaster at Arms, which has a passive effect that enhances his attacks but can be activated to damage nearby enemies and grant him increased defenses for each enemy hit. From his lore, Jax's real name is Sejax Kaelrings Kohari Ikethun. He is the ancient and final survivor of Acathia, a nation that was destroyed by the Void that they once used to fight for them. Before this fall, Jax was the champion of the Kohari, a band of legendary warriors that served Acathia. When his home eventually fell, he took up a brazier staff dubbed the Last Light of Acathia. Since then, he has traveled the world in search of mighty warriors to one day aid him in defeating the Void. Ready to rock and roll with the punches? Let's take a look at the ancestry, background, and class for this deft and dauntless duelist. It's unclear whether Acathians were originally human or not, but Jax, if he ever was, certainly no longer is. Between this inhuman nature, the multi-eyed aspect of all his masks, and just a desire to get some non-human ancestries in use, I've actually built Jax as a Galoma. I'm not sure I'll ever get another chance to use this ancestry, so I'm kinda leaping at the opportunity now and using it with the Farsight heritage just as one of the ones that actually feels like it fits the character. We'll take Pierce the Darkness to expand on this heritage, and because this feat has to be taken at first level, if you're going to take it at all. As a member of the now extinct Kohari, Jax is 100% a martial disciple, and choosing to have him become trained in athletics will even net him quick jump, since Leap Strike can also be used to bound towards wards and allies, not just enemies. This also fantastically makes him trained in warfare lore, which feels very apropos for the Grandmaster at Arms. Was there ever really any class choice for this man-moding melee master other than fighter? Well, in my mind, yes. But I did ultimately settle on fighter. We'll start off with the Vicious Swing class feat, which is sort of a mundane means of managing in power, packing a wallop into his next swing. He'll be trained in athletics for his agility, intimidation because he's a bit of a shit talker, occultism to identify the weaknesses of the Void, and survival because he also happens to be a fisherman. Then, when it comes to his ability scores, strength is going to be his primary focus, followed initially by his dexterity, largely because of some of the archetypes that I have in mind for him. I think just about any ability scores outside of intelligence suit him well as a tertiary ability score, which isn't to say he's dumb. I just think that the others take precedence. Before we move on though, I want to give a quick mention about equipment. In his original lore, Jax was a master at wielding improvised weapons, but that has disappeared somewhat in his new lore, where he wields an actual staff that will be represented as a bow staff, for reasons that will soon become apparent. A reason right off the bat, however, is the parry trait of this staff, allowing Jax to increase his AC as a sort of stand-in for his attack evading counter-strike. At second level, we'll launch into the fray with the Monk dedication, which mainly nets him the powerful Fist class feature, and makes him trained in performance, as a reference to the Jaximus skin, and because he's a showboater. He likes people seeing what he can do. The invading villains of the Void are vast in size, but Titan Wrestler helps Jax still push them around, though he will initially be limited by the trip trait of his bow staff unless he wants to take a hand off of it. Third level sees Jax take up Ancestral Paragon so that he can gain Watchful Gaze, granting him all-around vision and the ability to avoid being flanked. Again, as a sort of way to reference the entire area effect of Counter-Strike. Jax increases his athletics to expert to help land those longer jumps, and so that he can better knock enemies off their feet. With the Monk dedication as his previous class feat, our staff-swinging slugger selects basic kata for monastic weaponry at 4th level, which is unfortunately a dead feat. His bow staff has the monk trait, which means he will get some use out of it, but not until he picks up a few more feats. Then, with his previous skill increase, he can take Powerful Leap as his skill feat to let him leap even further, which is handy for an action when he doesn't need to make a full-on jump. My first choice was Ambush Awareness for Jax's 5th level Ancestry feat, and while I think you could take it to start off with, you'll want to retrain it at 7th level when Battlefield Surveyor from the Fighter gives the exact same bonus. Similarly, the Fighter's Bravery already covers Galoma Courage. This led me to settling on Catch the Details to net him some additional skill training, but I personally think Eye for Numbers is a little ridiculous. His skill increase goes to Acrobatics, making him an expert in it, but he also chooses a weapon group to become a master in. He ends up with clubs, because apparently that is the weapon group that all staves fall under. Finally, at 6th level, Jax can start making use of monastic weaponry by using advanced kata to take Key Strike, which reflects the fact that the additional damage dealt by Empower is actually magic damage. I wanted to make use of some of the fun skill feats, and I think Say That Again definitely falls into that category while also matching Jax's eagerness to throw down. Because of a focus on dexterity for his archetype, the constitution of this combative, courageous cudgeler comes up short, but toughness as his general feat for 7th level helps him hang in the fight. For this level skill increase, he becomes a master in athletics. With 2 archetype feats in the punching bag, Jax can now take up the Staff Acrobat dedication at 8th level, which offers 2 big benefits and a couple others. Firstly, it lets him shove with his bow staff, letting him get better use out of Say That Again, or just knocking people around. Secondly, it increases the distance he can leap, which as far as I'm aware, should stack with his powerful leap. This means that Jax has a 10-foot vertical, proving once and for all that blue men can jump. Or am I getting my colors mixed up? Then, his wall jump skill feat only expounds upon that, though it isn't entirely reflective of anything in his kit. For his 9th level Ancestry feat, Jax takes up Constant Gaze, so that enemies of an equal level or lower can't flank him, serving as another nod to his Counter-Strike. Furthermore, this blue-bodied brawler gains combat flexibility, which is probably best used for Sudden Leap to help represent his Leap Strike ability. Then, partially inspired by his Fishing passive, and also for an upcoming skill feat, he increases his Survival skill to Expert. Hitting the scene at 10th level is Monk's Flurry, giving Jax the Flurry of Blows action, which allows him to squeeze more strikes into a round to achieve the ramping attack speed of his Relentless Assault. This allows him 4 potential strikes a round, though even with the fighter's superlative attack bonus, it's a questionable choice to do so. For another skill feat, Jax takes That's Not Natural, which admittedly is very circumstantial. Even with all these circumstances met, he only really gets to use it if he doesn't roll Perception for initiative because of his Battlefield Surveyor. A skill increase at 11th level makes this mighty melee mutant a master in acrobatics, which allows him to take Kip up for his general feat so that he can spring back into the fight even after he gets knocked down. This build has taken a couple of defensive options to try to capture the feel of Counter-Strike's initial effect, but the reactivation part of it is honestly the more difficult aspect. Stunning isn't readily available in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, meaning that we are going to have to rely on something else. By taking up Staff Sweep, Jax can knock 2 enemies off their feet at once, which limits their actions if they don't want to be vulnerable, and at a penalty for making attacks. This is probably the best way to achieve this effect, though another advanced kata could get Jax Stunning Fist instead. However, between it using the lower Monk DC and having the Incapacitation trait, I'm not sure it's worth it. For his skill feat, Jax can take Rapid Mantle, since he is more of a strength-focused character, but you could also go to something like Forager, because you could potentially catch quite a few fish over the course of a game. At 13th level, Jax can take Defensive Instincts for further defensive options, which will mostly be useful when he finds enemies that can actually flank him, allowing him to gain a bonus to armor class and potentially step out of their flank. He becomes an expert in Intimidation and then becomes a legend in wielding clubs, which still feels weird calling stabs that. Aside from the sudden leap of combat flexibility, Jax can take Pivot Strike from his Staff Acrobat archetype at 14th level. This is a fantastic fit for Leap Strike and also comes with some bonus damage, as well as a trip action, letting him potentially combo Counter and Leap Strike. By taking Terrifying Resistance as his skill feat, he gains some resistance against spells, which is otherwise a difficult facet of his Grandmaster at Arms ultimate to cover. Jax likely could have taken Fleet a little bit earlier than 15th level, which would have helped his leaps, but it kinda slipped my mind until now. He gains improved flexibility at this level though, which I think is best spent on Furious Focus, so that he can use his Vicious Swing and still deliver further strikes, letting him deliver an empowered hit, potentially followed by a flurry of blows. Though I do also like Quick Reversal and Tactical Reflexes from among his fighter feats. His skill increase makes him a legend in athletics, but a boost to intelligence also makes him trained in stealth. Whirlwind Strike at 16th level serves to cover the area damage of both the reactivated Counter-Strike and Grandmaster at Arms, while also taking advantage of the Reach trait on Jax's bow staff. As a legend in athletics, he can also take Cloud Jump, because this build has had a bit of a focus on jumping, and we may as well commit. For his 17th level Ancestry feat, Jax takes True Gaze, as the sole Galoma feat of this level. For his skill increase though, we'll grab a boost to Intimidation to become a master in it. There's been a few methods to enhance Jax's defensive capabilities, to cover both his Counter-Strike and his Grandmaster at Arms. However, I think a truer representation of the former ability, where Jax spins his staff to knock attacks out of the air, is in Cut from the Air, allowing him to literally do that, though as a reaction. With all the jumping Jax does, Catfall for his skill feat might help in case he doesn't quite stick his landing. He takes up Fast Recovery at 19th level to further increase his defensive capabilities, though it may not be readily apparent, as they mainly help him recover from afflictions plaguing him. And then, after a brief detour in Intimidation, Jax applies his last skill increase to Acrobatics, making him a legend in it. By taking Weapon Supremacy at 20th level, Jax can pack up to 5 attacks in a single round, with a little help from his flurry of blows. Or he could make a Vicious Swing, unleash a flurry of blows, and then still deliver a strike with his staff. For his final skill feat, he takes up Water Sprint, just because it's a super cool feat and feels like something that would be in this wise warrior's wheelhouse. Given his heavy use of archetypes, Jax could gain some serious benefit in a free archetype game. He takes the options featured here, but could also grab Elemental Fist to add some fire damage to his staff, Stunning Fist just to gamble on that stun, and then Perfection's Path to shore up his mental defenses. He also just generally benefits from more key spells to have those extra focus points. From Staff Acrobat, he likes Whirlwind Stance for the crazy constant AC bonus. Then with his freed up fighter feats, I like options such as Smash from the Air, Quick Reversal, and Advantageous Assault. But if you want to represent the power-up effect of a leveled up Jax and Legends of Runeterra, United Assault is a pretty solid choice. Ring the bell because this build is done, though let's give it a quick review. Jax, Grandmaster at Arms, is a Farsight Galoma fighter with a Martial Disciple background, representing his rank as one of the Kohari of Acathia. Reaching into the Monk archetype gives him access to monastic weaponry and flurry of blows with his staff, and between that and Weapon Supremacy, he achieves the attack speed of his Relentless Assault. He represents Grandmaster at Angling with a tiny investment in survival, which he also uses to gain That's Not Natural, aiding in his battle against the Void, his hated foe. He can use combat flexibility for Sudden Leap or Pivot Strike as his Leap Strike, allowing him to charge into the mix. The initial aspect of Counter-Strike actually has a few means of accomplishing it. Watchful Gaze and a Constant Gaze, Cut from the Air, and even the parry trait of his favored Bow Staff. For the area stun, his best bet is likely to be Staff Sweep, allowing him to simultaneously trip two enemies, a compromise on the stun condition, enforced by the translation into Pathfinder Second Edition. Jax's AC increasing abilities such as Defensive Instincts can also serve to represent his Grandmaster at Arms, though the magic resistance is regrettably limited to Terrifying Resistance. As for the actual damage component of it, he relies on Whirlwind Strike, which benefits heavily from the reach trait of his bow staff that stands in as the last light of Acathia. A boisterous brawlic bruiser from the bottom of his blue being, this burly battler barges into brouhahas, bludgeoning and bashing baddies with a blessed, burning beacon. But that brings us to the end of this build and this channel, at least until the new year. I hope that you have all been enjoying this series. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on this build and in general, and I'll see you all, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, come January 15th with a fresh, new monster. Until then, you can always check out my past work over on the blog linked below. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a fantastic Friday.